To me, I realized that actually impact, it's something that it doesn't matter if you're a small pebble, but if you hit the right waters, you can make the largest amount of impact to everybody around you.
Hi there, I'm Bex Craig and you're listening to the Not Just Anything podcast for women who want it whole. I hope you'll join me each week as we hear extraordinary stories from women around the world about how they've curated a whole life by design rather than by default. On today's episode, we're speaking to the vibrant and energetic Nichol Ng. Nichol is CEO and MD of F&amp Group, which is a multi-million-dollar group of companies in the F&B space here in Singapore. She's also the co-founder of the Food Bank in Singapore, a member of the Young Presidents Organisation, as well as their Global Impact Regional Award honoree for Southeast Asia, and the president of One Singapore. In case you think there probably isn't any time to do anything else, she's also the mother of 4 young children. In our conversation, we explore everything from her story of turning around a generations-old family business, the importance of giving and philanthropy, and how she manages to fit all of this into a very busy life. The conversation was truly electric, which was aided, I should say, by a very large lightning storm which was going on in the background, which you may hear from time to time. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did in recording it. A really big warm welcome to Nichol Ng, who's joining me in Singapore today. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Hot weather, which is something that I really, really like.
It is hot weather. And for those of us listening that can't see you, Nichol is this like vibrant color on the screen, looking absolutely sensational and sort of exuding your own sunshine and color and brightness and lightness and warmth. So thank you for bringing that already. And I've been so looking forward to this conversation. You have an extraordinary story and some really amazing things that you're up to today. So I'm super keen to get stuck in if you're comfortable.
Yes, sure. Let's go.
Let's go. Perfect. So why don't we start there? As I say, you've got an amazing story to tell, and seems to be so much in your life that you are doing. So maybe could you catch the listeners up? Tell us a bit about you. Tell us a bit about what's your story that's led you to where you are today.
Firstly, I identify myself being a mother to 4 kids, 5 in fact, including my husband. So that's important to note. Secondly, I was born into a food distribution family. Basically, the business itself has more than 80 over years in the business. So my grandfather actually came to Singapore in seek of a better life, and this was pre-World War II. And I don't know how many pandemics ago, right? But collectively, we kind of survived World War II, the Asian currency crisis, the previous SARS, and things like that. But the transformation of the business itself, it's a little bit of like rising from the flames and then coming down, again, and then going up again. But that was the history. So food resonates a very big part in my life, and not just because that's the lifeline, which I was born from, right? But the other thing also is maybe some of you may not know, I am a survivor of an eating disorder. So I struggled with eating disorder since I was 11. Actually, even before 11 years old. I guess I was 5 or 6 years old that I kind of realized that I was slightly taller or bigger built than most Asian girls. And, my aunties and my uncles and relatives are quite critical of like, why is your brother like half your size? Are you stealing his food and stuff like that? So the identity of being perfect, in many, many ways kind of like started when I was really, really young. But having that eating disorder from young, I guess coined a different part of me because I went through puberty, struggling through insecurities, which is something that nobody quite sees. How can Nichol actually be insecure, right? And I'm taking broad strides, whether is it like in terms of gender inequality or things like that, and actually I've been struggling through eating disorder even till through my pregnancies as well, because once you are in an eating disorder for an extended amount of time, it doesn't quite leave you. So I call myself a survivor. So there's still like 10% where I'm not really quite out of the woods, but it has created my own personality. I'm quite tough on myself. And so I was asked to join the business, after my dad's bankruptcy and subsequent revival of the food business and things like that, in order to modernize it through technology. I mean, he has carried a lot of weight on his shoulders, and like with losing the empire and everything else, you can imagine the emotional stress that he has had. And I said, yeah, sure. No, I love to cook. And so when my dad asked me to come back, I said, yeah, sure. So I took on this business as if it was my own, and not knowing that how long I will stay. But I knew that I was going to be there for my dad. My uncles actually gave me 1 year to survive in the business. He said that, you with that red hair, red long hair, 3-inch heels, trust me, you won't survive a day in the warehouse. And I was 23, right? I was like, okay. And here I am. It's been 19 years and I'm still around. And not only am I around, but I think I literally took something that was very traditional, very old school, and I basically dug out all the bad parts and tried to retrofit it into a new model, like how you would see a Lego. So the Lego parts are still there. The customers that we serve, the food. So I've just broken down the parts and made the model a little bit nicer. And the other thing as well is that I also take on the role of being a mentor in many ways. Maybe because I'm a big sister, and actually my younger brother is like only 1 year younger than I am. But from young, I've been told that you have to take care of him and all that. So I've always taken on a big sister kind of role, a mentorship kind of role. And even for the business, because this is a traditional business, a lot of the wholesalers and distributors have struggled to get their younger generation to join the business. And so for our company, we literally are leading the way in terms of being an inspiration on bringing on young talents, not just for our company, but for the entire industry as well. And not just in Singapore, I think even in Indonesia, we've got, business owners flying down their second or third gen to understand that. And of course, the other thing is that from young, we've been exposed to charity plus the busybodiness. So like, although like 4 or 5 kids later, right? I still feel a need that we have to do more. There's more to life, and it's not just about business and how much margins that you make. So in 2012, which is the same year, after buying over the family business in '07, I gave it a couple of years to settle down. And also after understanding the amount of food waste that Singapore actually generates, that's 30% of everything that we import, while still maintaining the number
Gosh.
one position in terms of food security. I said there must be hungry people out there that can use these foods that we're dumping away, and they're perfectly still good to eat food. So when I was expecting my number one, my eldest child in 2012, so if you ever Google, like the YouTube video on Food Bank Singapore, you would see me with this humongous stomach because I was left with like 10 days to the due date.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and we bit the bullet and we registered the Food Bank Singapore as a separate standalone charity organization. There was plenty of naysayers as well, including the government. Interestingly, they didn't allow us to use the word bank because, yeah, they
Oh.
said that, there's no more banking licenses in Singapore. You're not allowed to use the word bank and things like that. I said, hey, I'm really not an OCBC or a Bank of America or Citibank or something. I'm really here as a charity. So I had to do a lot of research. It took us, I think, about 6 months or more to convince them that we are here to be part of a larger global movement. And at that point, I think other than Food Bank Hong Kong, it was just Food Bank Singapore. So in Southeast Asia and even all the way to China, for example, it's very little known about what food banking is, although in Europe, in the US, and Australia is well established. So we started an industry in Asia, I must say, and we decided that we wanted to do a good job about it. So when my brother and I started the food bank, it was that simple idea of redirecting food waste or excess food, or ugly foods to the people in need. We have grown leaps and bounds. So in the first year, we redistributed 2 tons of food. Last year, we redistributed 1.6 million kilograms of food, and we've never thought that we would grow to the
Wow.
size that we are today. So we currently serve 370 charity organizations. And the other thing that we also did is to come up with the first national food insecurity report that Singapore ever has. And why this is impactful for a country like Singapore, in case of you who doesn't know, Singapore doesn't have a minimum wage. There is no poverty line. So when you do not have these two, it is simply impossible to be able to draw the line of who are the people in need, to be simply put. So this hunger report is the closest report that you will ever have in terms of the demographic of who are the people in need. So we're looking at 10.4% of the people residing in Singapore. So if you look at 5.6 to 5.7 million people, we're literally looking at more than 500,000 people. that finds it difficult to feed themselves. And with the impact of COVID, you can imagine likely the numbers have gone up to like 15% maybe, or even closer to 20% on a cyclical kind of a movement. So that's one.
Mm.
And the other thing is One Singapore. I stepped up to be the president of this very tiny organization, simply again because there was no one talking about poverty issues, and definitely not in Singapore, because everything is well hidden in our very state of the art public housing.
Mm.
I really respect our local government, and I really appreciate it that with social media, with podcasts like this, all of us have been given additional platforms to raise awareness, additional voices as well. And I think the last 3 to 5 years, basically, there's so much awareness and knowledge that's been placed out there already. And I think Singapore being a first world country that's very affluent, I think there's so much more that we can help the region as well. So collectively, between the food bank as well as One Singapore, we're doing a lot of work for the region and not just for Singapore.
I mean, it's honestly incredible. Any one of those individually would be, we could probably spend an entire hour talking about, and yet here you are doing all of these things, and as you said, 4/5 children, and I think you were quite modest in how you described the business, but the transformation that you've been able to take the organization on, and kind of what it now represents is phenomenal. And it's funny because what I also so appreciated in the way that you painted that picture was it was kind of gloss free, which is what this podcast is really all about. There seem to be some ups and some downs and some learnings and some ways that you then, turn things around. It seems to me like you're a real go-getter. Where does this kind of hunger, I mean, would you describe yourself as that? Like, where does this hunger, this drive to see a problem, I'm going to solve that. 30% food wastage, right? How can we look at that? Poverty across the region, how do we go after that? Where does this come from?
Let me share something with you. Every time there is a death in the family, I'll be the one who pick up the pieces and say, let's go and plan a fanciful funeral so that we can give a great send away. So I'm always the leader of the pack by being the most positive and confident. But I think I've learned a lot from my late father as well, right? I mean, of course, with the bankruptcy and the ups and the downs, it has taken a toll on him, which is why he passed on pretty young at 67, and it's due to a heart condition, right? With all the stresses. He was a school dropout at 15. So in the 80s and 90s, it was a great way to do business with trading and Singapore being a free port, right? And so I saw Daddy dabble in everything from movie making, seafood trawling. We had an office in Switzerland, doing perfume trading for the duty-free shops. We were Swatch watch distributor. We were Walkman distributor for Aiwa in Taiwan. We were building bungalows. We were movie making, right? So in the 90s, like Singapore tried to be like this movie making hub for Asia, right? So he had his hands dirty in every piece of the pie. 40 offices in 25 countries for a tiny little Singaporean company. I think that was relatively unheard of. And when the big bang in 97 came, I think my dad took it very, very hard because he actually was the one who gave the rest of the family everything. For my uncles and my cousins, like world-class education, houses, and everything else. And I'm just being real, right? This is family business. So whoever who does best, you actually went to harvest everything that you have and just give it back. And so my dad was the first in line. He went bankrupt. I was there when the banks came to seize the house. I had 30 minutes to pack, and the Cisco guard came with the gun and everything else. And my mom, who's a housewife all her life, was just sitting there on the floor. Girl, what to do? And my dad was in the office. But that's when reality set in. And I thank my parents a lot for the person that I am today, because despite the comfortable upbringing that we had, they never forgotten to make it real for us. We never ever took anything for granted. So my parents kept us very grounded. So we were very real kids. We got our hands dirty, and that's why when things were bad, basically we just rallied around my parents, rallied around my dad. And I learned so much from him because what he did was he took on everything in terms of the debt, and he made sure that as many people were well protected and they were the last to get hit. That sense of responsibility, while as bad as sometimes as it sounds, my mom would blame my dad, she had taken less responsibilities or whatever it is. But I learned a lot from him. That sense of responsibility. You want to do something big? you jolly well be able to suck it up because you don't know if you will fail. And there are tons of people behind you, the followers and the people who work with you that's looking up to you. And so I learned that from my dad. And so even after bankruptcy, to see him to be able to pick up and to be able to, ring fence my grandfather's business, and go out to the trade again, being laughed at sometimes, right? But he just went out there, right, and said that, hey, in business, you fail sometimes. I will come back. My daughter will do something about it. We will leave a legacy behind, and his story has so much essence and character to it. My biggest regret in life, it's not writing a book or actually documenting it. My dad would have been such an interesting person to interview or to do a story on. But he was the person that I really, really looked up to.
You can feel that. And I mean, you can almost feel him here now, because when you started to talk about those things that were important to you or what he taught you, it made so much sense in the context of the story that you'd shared before. You talk about realness and responsibility, and the other R word that came to me as you were talking is just such profound resilience as well, to be able to bounce back and to, as you say, take on some of that responsibility. But I'm imagining, as you said, you were 23, you were young when you came into the family business. And so these things have obviously been pillars for you as you've come in terms of what you've learned. Tell me about the times where you maybe didn't have some of that confidence in yourself, or what have you done to, I suppose, to get to this place where you're really honoring some of that confidence or that responsibility or that resilience that is obviously so present right now?
So I think I had a lot to prove. We are a huge family. My dad had 9 siblings. So there was a lot to prove to family members that we were not so close to. So that was one. And secondly, I fully understand that I'm jumping into shoes in businesses that is not exactly ours as well. This legacy is actually my grandfather's. And the other thing is that I think even in my own team, whether it's a customer service or the delivery guys or things like that, everyone is just waiting for me to trip and fall, perhaps. And I think even the greater industry as well, whether when I'm meeting chefs or buyers, and this is something that I always tell the very young people of today. And simply it's because of the way that I'm packaged. Sometimes people just discount you. But the other thing also was, as resilient as I was and as close to my dad as I was, I had squabbles with my dad because it's like you would love each other, right? And you know that you just wanted the best for the business, but the way to get to that end point was kind of different. My dad wouldn't agree with like 90% of everything that I did. And I felt that was getting a little bit difficult because I was doing it by myself. There was no other third generation. My brother was not in the business yet. I always remembered the biggest time was I wanted to transition the business to be something better and more professional. And that was the time when I realized that the logistics guys was something that I can't overcome. That means it's because I was a female, number one, and secondly, I don't use foul language. So, and and this was a big stumbling block because I was getting scolded or told off by people. And this was when I actually reached out to my brother. We're really close, and he just happened to be working like 10 minutes away from me. So I would be crying in the car, going to his place of work, right? Two of us would be huddled in the car, and I was just, I can't do this anymore. I've changed this, I've changed this, I've changed this. But the final frontier is the logistics guys, which is the most important for distribution. And if I don't change that, no branding in the world is going to make anything better because those guys are literally our walking salesmen, right? And I was dealing with people that won't wear shirts to make deliveries to restaurants and hotels. So we had that huddle in the car. I would say that that's my lowest point. I really wanted to like tender my resignation, although I was like the director of the company by name, just to walk away. So back to the question of what actually motivates me, right? I genuinely believe that our company is so small, really, really super small. We're like a drop in this huge ocean, right? And so when I was first asked to join YPO, right, like, why do you want to like get a small fish, in this huge, huge ocean? And I was like a nobody. But to me, I realized that actually impact, it's something that it doesn't matter if you're a small pebble, but if you hit the right waters, you can make the largest amount of impact to everybody around you. Even if that fish is huge, right? Maybe if I hit him in the right part, he's going to twitch somewhere and say, hey, I need to make that change, and this is exactly what I'm doing. So even for YPO right now, because I'm the incoming learning officer for the next term, I actually took on the giants by saying, you guys are spending like so much money, and every year about this learning thing, getting big speakers and whatever else, but does it even make an impact? And actually with COVID, right? I told them, I said, I know none of you want to take a risk with backing any charities and things like that. But as business owners, especially during this pandemic, we realize that actually we're even more powerful than the government because we can change the way people conduct their businesses. People, support charities, for example. And I'm not here to say that support the food bank or whatever else. That's not the nonsense. But through learning, can we actually teach business people with millions and millions and billions of dollars to make impact in that small business or that big businesses? Oh my gosh.
So the universe is talking to us. Yes, the impact.
Yeah,
I
and
love it.
but that's something, creating impact, small and big.
I mean, I just want everyone that's listening to just absorb what you just said, especially about the sort of the small pebble hitting the right wave or flicking on the right fish. And it's the word impact is, you've said it so many times. You've also said the word legacy multiple times in this conversation. So it's important for people to internalize that it doesn't have to start out being this enormous thing. It can in fact be something, whatever you have to bring, that will create this kind of ripple effect. And so just paint this picture for us. The work that you're doing right now, what is the future that you're trying to build? What is the vision, the impact, the legacy that you're working towards for yourself, for your family, for your community?
I think let's just start with Singapore. If there's one country that can completely eradicate food insecurity, it would be Singapore. Small little island, plenty of affluent people, easy to manage the middle incomers and things like that. And so I really want to hit our vision of getting rid of food insecurity by 2025 in Singapore. So unlike other charities who, have, many ways of fundraising to, fatten the P&Ls and things like that, for me, I really want to find a way to shut down the food bank in Singapore by then so that we can actually give a helping hand to our regional partners to develop their food banking manuals, philosophies, SOPs, and really get the help to the greater people in need. So this is one. And the other thing also is, if I can envision a world of tomorrow, some people are saying that, the ESG or the CSR is the by the way. I really believe that it's not just going to be by the way anymore. It is going to be the only way that we have to conduct our lives, whether it's in a personal capacity or, in a professional capacity. And a lot of it, because I'm a mom, it really starts from home. The books can only teach so much, and all our kids are so smart now, right? With all the knowledge that they have. But I think the value system is something that is still not quite there yet. And it all starts from how the homes are being, fitted out, that value system. So I always share with my hubby, right? Don't worry, the kids have so many options. Even if they do so badly in school, there's so many things that they can do. There's so many things that they can learn. They can, make money, get a tool, get a service, get a trade, learn about different things. It's unlike my time. If your O levels are crap, basically, there's very little options for you. But nowadays, the children are so fortunate because there's so many things that they can learn and they can do, outside of the books. So for me, I really, really want to ensure that it's a world that we can put a thought into everything that we do, whether it's for your neighbor, for your fellow teammate, for your own family, for the greater industry, for society. It's something that's in my corporate deck right now. And it's really something that my grandfather shared with my uncles and that I've got to hear about as well. It's just very simple. It's about putting a thought into everything that you do. And when that is the preceding thing that happens for you. So whether is it you take on a business, take on a charity, helping someone, it makes it very simple.
Yeah, it does seem really simple and easy to grasp, and yet I can see how great a difference it would make if you do that. And it's funny because there seems to be a thread here a lot around giving. Like there's something about giving back, or but what is does that resonate with you, or what is it about giving that is so essential?
Yeah, I'm someone with a very old soul. So usually at a very young age, I mingle with the much older folks. And so my grandmother actually left a statement on me when I was like 5 or 6. She said, "It is a far greater blessing to be able to give than to take." And so you said you are not less off if you give more. And it's not something that everybody can grasp, but it's something that I took with me. So every time, if I'm on a project, for example, it's okay. I'll give my 110%, even if it doesn't matter if my teammate is giving like 20%, right? It's okay because I'm blessed to be able to give more. So that's something that I've taken away with me in everything that I do. And in fact, the funny thing is that I've taught my kids that, and I hope that they understand that it's okay, you're not losing out, or, in Singapore, we have this fear of losing out and things like that, right? But really, it's a blessing to be able to, so much more to give than to take from others.
It's so important, and it's funny because that was going to be my next question: is how does this translate that into your parenting philosophy? But it's clear it's very present, and it's funny because it's a repeated commentary that comes up in this podcast a lot, which is that the act of giving should not be seen as something that you yourself are, that you are benefiting others with, but it is but also a blessing to yourself. So I love the way that you framed that. And so, because you keep referencing also your role as a mum, so how do you curate your life in such a way that means that you can lead this incredibly innovative, forward-thinking business and food bank and One Singapore charity? I mean, how do you design your life in such a way that it comprises all the things that matter to you?
Yeah. I have a very sticky checklist. And for example, a philosophy that I live by is that my inbox of my email must be clean at the end of the day. If there's anything that's still left, it's because it's my to-do list for the next day. Yeah, so my philosophy is that anything that you can complete in the hour, in the day, do not leave it till tomorrow. So every time there's a new project, or even like for my kids' project, for example, or a to-do list as a mom, I always ensure that I'm able to complete it today so that I can take on more challenges for tomorrow. So in fact, I've been sharing this with my kids as well. And it's not just about schoolwork, right? So, but it's about having that vision of what you can complete today. And the other thing also is, surprisingly, I just had a staycation with my eldest daughter because she was really struggling in school. She has her first exams coming up, and she has this idea that she needs to ace it. And because she has a little bit of learning difficulties, so I told my daughter that learning is a journey. Life is a journey. You're starting out, you're 8.5 years old on your first exam. But it's just first of the many more exams that you will have until you're like 100 years old or 120 years old. So actually what I did, I did a life map for her to tell her that what you're going to experience this year, next 10 years, and things like that. And I think sometimes as parents or even as business owners or people ourselves, we're so engrossed in the challenges of today, we don't see the entire lifespan of the challenges that we will face, for the next 20, 30, 50 years, for example. So really, what's the big picture and the game plan that we're going to have? And actually, through talking to my daughter, it just refreshed my mind that I need to live the moment, embrace the problems that, and the good things that comes as well on a daily basis, but take a moment to breathe and recap on what's going to come, and that's really, really the most important.
Gosh, it's so powerful. I'm just thinking of like how useful that would be. I'm taking myself back to, my times going through exams and things like that, because at a young age, you do feel that pressure. And especially, we know, especially women, to be perfect and to, show up in a certain way. And so to have that realization that all of this, as we know, is a journey, is really powerful reframe, I think. So, and so what would for you a kind of I think I'm getting a sense of this, but what would a whole or fulfilled life look like to you? Like if you have an ideal week, what does it look like? Where does the energy kind of come from for you?
My ideal week, for example, if everything is well taken care of, I'll just be a little housewife stuck in the kitchen because I love to cook, but I do not have the luxury of time. But if I had the luxury of a week, when everything is settled, I just want to huddle myself in the kitchen, be this little mother, baking brownies, cookies, muffins, making pasta, because I think that's where I'm meant to be. So you can imagine my beautiful retirement plan right now. If I can, own this really nice house, and I actually made a deal with my husband when I got married. I said our house can be small, but can we just envision something with a walk-in chiller? So
That's all I want.
yeah, and I don't need a walk-in wardrobe, but I want a walk-in chiller. So I think
I
that
love
says a
that.
lot about who I am. And I guess the other thing that would be icing on the cake, if it's real time right now, every day would be perfect if I can just take a drive with my kids, singing in the car, not a care in the world. And that's what I do every weekend with them, just one mom, four crazy kids, to the park, Universal, whatever. And some people will be looking at me, this crazy mom with four kids, no help or whatever, and no husband. But that's what I really, really love, indulge in the mess that we create, and just be ourselves, live for the moment.
Live for the moment. Oh, I really, really love that. And definitely amazing, vivid imagery that you're providing here, which I'm loving, and amazing sort of takeaways for all of us. And so, what is it that you are kind of holding a sign for other people, or what's the message here that you want people to, I guess, take away from your life learnings, or the things that you're taking a stand for?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have mentioned that you can't have your cake and eat it too. Yeah, I am an example that maybe you can. It's about check balances. What's your check and balance? Prioritizing different things. So you can have your cake and eat it too. It's just about the timing in your life, about when these things are going to happen. I mean, obviously, not everything is going to happen in the same time. Some things are going to be off the mark, not so perfect. If I had a choice to be a mother younger, I would have gotten married younger, but everything will fall into place when the timing is right.
Can we just jump in? Because I think this is a really important point, because I was actually going to ask you also about some of the myths that you want to bust about sort of what we get told in particular as women. So what do you mean by we can have our cake and eat it too? Like, what could that really look like?
I think some mothers feel that they either need to sacrifice their own visions, not just career, but their own passions and their own visions. When I say passion, it can be they really want to contribute to an NGO, for example, but because they're so busy with motherhood and all that, maybe they feel that they can't. But I seriously feel that as a woman, you need to find your own identity in having a diversified platform of how you can identify yourself, so that in case you don't fare that well as a mother, you have something to backtrack to. And so for me, I feel that I want to be a mother, I want to accomplish something in life, I want to give back to society. And it's about being that go-getter and that checklist, right? So, but that's for me, that's myself. Not everybody may need to have such a full and all 360, we want to accomplish everything. Everybody's cakes look a bit different. And I think that's
They
important
do.
to note, right? Maybe for me, it might taste like a tasty brownie cupcake or something, but for someone else, it's just a banana muffin, right? So recognize that your cakes can be different, but you can have your cake and eat it too.
So many things that you just said there that I want people to just take in. So one is, we're all lit up by different things, and that what makes us feel full or what makes us feel whole is going to look different. And the other thing that you said, which I think is loving, the lightning is really with is really believing in us today as well, is this idea that our identity is more complex and nuanced, and you use the word diverse, diversified identity, much more so than we give it credit for. A lot of the time it's like and you talked also about choices. I'm this or I'm that, or I must make a choice about this or that, or I must make a sacrifice, as you described. So what brought this realization on for you that, or what, was there a moment where you had this, oh yeah, actually these are the different things that need to be present in my life for it to feel really fulfilled?
I think I've been a juggler from young. I find my sense of self-worth in different things, in different aspects. And maybe it's also my language of love, which I like to gift acts of services. So I think what I'm saying is that maybe know yourself, and then you'll be able to identify, what fulfills you. So different people would be quite different in that aspect. So for me, it's like that's my language of love. So whether is it like now, even if I'm working for business or whatever, but I feel that actually I'm contributing back to my employee's life, right? I'm helping him or her to better his or her life so that he or she can lead a better life. And so my philosophy is when they come to our business, I always say that, if I hire you for 3 months, 3 years, 30 years, whatever it is, if we have failed to value add to your life, to do better, whether is it a better paying job or like lead you to your passion or something like that, I have failed as an employer. And I take that with me wherever I go. And I think that makes a big difference as how you see the business and even for the charity as well.
Yeah, and you can tell that making sure that the impact that you're having with even an individual employee is significant, that you wanting them to leave better than they came in.
Yeah.
It's a powerful message. And so for our listeners listening, mostly women, but all over the world, what are some of the things, and I know I've just asked you this, but what are some of the mantras that you live by, the advice that you would want them to take away?
I think a couple of things, if I may share. Firstly is don't be too hard on ourselves as women. Secondly, it's okay to be a few pounds heavier than you were when you got married. So I think the sense of perfection, it's like I have to make the mark to be a mother, a great career woman, and I still have to look like I nailed it every single day. The makeup has to be intact, and I think by simply believing in who we are leading by examples. And a lot of people are saying, name the women that's breaking glass ceilings and blah 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 and things like that. But it's not just the few women that are breaking glass ceilings. Every day, all of us collectively, as a female contingency, as I call it, we're breaking a lot of glass ceilings as a team. And there's one more thing that I've shared with some of my other teammates as well is that just remember that your eyeliner doesn't have to be perfect all the time, and it's okay, if you're nursing, and you look a bit sleepy, on that day. And so that's what I do as well as a business owner because I've got 4 kids, and running a business. And I've displayed that in front of my employees sometimes as well, that I had a late night, sleepless night, 24 hours, no sleep, right? The kid was a bit whiny and stuff like that. That's okay to be imperfect while you're accomplishing perfection in other areas.
It's such an important message. And what, in your experience, in allowing your, because it sounds like this was a journey for you as well, and as it has been for all of us, what in your experience opens up when you do that, when you release some of that, when you show that you're not perfect? What's been made possible?
I think in my own personal circle, it has made me a bit more relatable. So in my younger years, maybe even like 35 and below, right? There's always this need to like, oh, you gotta be like perfect, so put together and everything. And sometimes it scares people away. Even my children, for example. So, in the first 4 years of my motherhood life, right? Everything has to be on the tea, right? Oh, the milk has got to be this brand, the bottle has to be perfect. What's the state of the art sterilizer, blah, 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 and if you don't put them into the right school, you're missing. But honestly, when I started sharing a lot more with my children and with my husband, for example, even with my teammates, that, these are my fears and these are my anxiety and these are my worries, it doesn't make me a lesser person. It makes me a more relatable person. And sometimes it enables them to open up. That makes me a better person. So I've learned so much from my husband, right? So last year, we're locked down, and everyone, I mean, he's been flying. So last year he's been just grounded and stuff. So much more time to communicate. And and so we started talking about these things because to him, the wife seemed so perfect. I can deliver everything. But when I allowed myself to be a little bit more vulnerable and I reached out to him and said, honey, I can't do everything by myself. I'm juggling four generations in one household. I've got 10 people living with me.
Oh, wow.
So he told me, honey, give yourself a break, and cut yourself some slack. And so when I kind of did that, and realized that I need that 1 hour to myself, whether it's a TV time or Netflix time or food time or eating, for example, it's just to have that indulgence that you should provide yourself. Everything just kind of like smoothened the groove a little bit more, and paved the way. And it brought everybody that I love so much far closer to me.
Yeah, I think that's the magic. That's the magic, right? Which is when you do it, then you give everybody the opportunity to both feel closer to you, but also to release some of that pressure on themselves as well. Because suddenly I don't have to be so buttoned up. I don't have to be so sort of perfect. I feel like any one of the things that you've said today is, I mean, they're deeply resonating with me. I'm going to, try and do better in my own life on some of these fronts. But is there anything else that you want to share, or any last thoughts that you wanted to leave with our listeners?
I think for a lot of us that are struggling at this moment, juggling too many balls in the air, sometimes just envision the balls as maybe squash balls that can bounce around. So do not fear that they land on the floor. Yeah, I think a lot of times we feel that we're juggling like glass balls, right? The moment they drop, that's it. But why can't they be squash balls, tennis balls, whatever balls, that you may want, or even oranges, right, with a hardy skin? And it's all right. It's perfectly all right to drop some balls. And I guess through this pandemic as well, and this is something that I've shared with my 4 little ones, that it is a blessing that we are the chosen generation to be living through this, because the stories that we're going to tell, the impact that we can create, the learnings that we have is going to change humankind forever. And if I may end on this note, I think this is going to be it.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that's an amazing note to end. I'm completely covered in goosebumps. Yeah, let's see this as our opportunity. Let's see this as our greatest opportunity to create impact. I mean, I am so inspired. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for being so open and transparent about your learnings along the way, and just for also your time, because obviously it's incredibly precious. So big thank you.
Most welcome.
Thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of Not Just Anything for Women Who Want It Whole. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to subscribe to our weekly podcast and leave us a review. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here with us, and we look forward to having you join again. And remember, be brave, be whole,